Hello, hello, hello. Come on in, come on in. Super excited you guys are joining us for our webinar today. Welcome, welcome. As you come in, as you enter the room, please do me a favor and just drop in the chat, say hello and tell us where you're joining us from. Are you in California? Are you in Wales? Are you in Kenya? Are you in Australia? Where are you in this great, big, wonderful world? Welcome all. Welcome Ada, Alejandra, Alexandria, Amanda, Lisa, Antoinette, Ben. Come on in. Hello. Looking to see if I see some familiar spaces, some familiar faces or names. Welcome everybody. Oh, great. From Irvine. I see a lot of people from Chicago in the place. All the way from Greenville, South Carolina. Well, welcome. Hey, Lucretia. Fantastic. Hello, all. Thank you for saying hi. We appreciate it. Well, Teresa and Terry, hello. Long time no see. Fantastic. Glad to have you guys in the space. Super excited, super excited. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to our Enhancing and Empowering Conversations for Positive Change. You could be 1,000 places on your lunch, but instead you choose to spend it with us. And for that, we are so very grateful. Thank you for being here today. We are excited. We have a fantastic presentation for you today. We know that you'll enjoy it. Next slide, please, Dean. All right, so for those of you guys who are not familiar, this is how we engage during our webinar. Because it's a webinar format and not a meeting format, when you're ready to speak, raise your hand and we'll ask you to unmute yourself. Feel free to type your comments in the group chat. Make sure it's going to everybody. Otherwise, it's just going to come to us, the panelists. And as much as we want you to share, we want you to share with the whole group. And then please be patient with us. There's a nice amount of people. We're supposed to have almost 150 people on today. So for that reason, sometimes we may get a little caught up. Be patient with us, okay? As we try and answer all the questions. Right? Next slide, Dee. Thank you. These are our agreements. At Be Strong Families, we have agreements just about for every training. And we've taken our cafe agreements and wrapped them up in a nice little bow. And this is what they look like. The first one, we ask you to speak from your own experience and use I statements as you're sharing. Everybody has a story. Yours is important. We don't want you to talk about, other people and what they did. Your experience has value. So we're going to ask you to use that and focus on that. Follow the golden rule, treat other people the way you want to be treated. This is really all of our cafe agreements, like no judgment, because you can get that on social media. Don't want to have it here. Don't give advice. It's your own personal stuff. And then full presence, please no multitasking. We know that you're on lunch, so we expect that you're enjoying lunch, hopefully, while you're in this training. Other than that, try to refrain from playing Candy Crush right now. You're going to miss something. Okay, Candy Crush, Words of Friends, you're going to miss something. And then if you need a minute, take a minute, okay? Sometimes these webinars are great, but sometimes we don't know what we're carrying when we come in the room, and it causes something for us, okay? So if you need a minute, take a minute, come on back. We'll be right here waiting for you, okay? All right. Do we agree? I see people putting agree in the chat. Good job. Good job. You guys are already on top of it. I love it. I love it. Go ahead and put that in the chat, and I think we might be good to go. Yeah, I think we might be good to go. So next slide, please, Dee. Thank you. So today, we are sharing the 4 elements of compassionate leadership with our wonderful presenter, Andrea Hollingsworth. And I'm your host, Sarita Sashington. Let me tell you a little bit about Andrea before I pass it over to her, okay? She is passionate about helping leaders build cultures of care, emotional wellness, and mental health awareness in organizational environments. As a current psychotherapist and former university professor, Andrea has spent decades researching, counseling, and teaching on topics related to human wholeness, happiness, and interpersonal well-being. Since 2008, she has published and presented widely on the topic of compassion, a theme that remains central to her work with leaders and organizations. Andrea adores good books, good conversations, good coffee, woman after my own heart, and all things cozy. She lives with her family in Maple Grove, Minnesota. Andrea, we are super excited to have you today, and I am going to turn it over to you. Okay, enjoy.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my PowerPoint here, but while I do, I have to explain the all things cozy. I live in Minnesota, and it's real cold here. I saw a couple people from Minnesota and neighboring areas, and it was a tough winter. So I have to do everything possible to stay cozy. All right. Well, I just want to say before I start, welcome. It's so good to be connected with you today, wherever you're tuning in from, whoever you are. I do feel connected to you, and I'm so glad you chose to be here today. One housekeeping item, there will hopefully be some time later for questions. And so if you think of something that you really would like to revisit, make sure you just either put it in the chat or jot it down so you don't forget, so we can make sure to return to it later. And if we don't have time to return to your question, I would love to connect with you. So you can just email me and we can set up a time to talk about it. I would love that. So, all right. I'm going to start out by naming the obvious. Can we all agree that we've had a bit of a tough run these past 3 years? Right? I mean, first there was COVID, and I want you to think back for a minute to how you first felt when you were locked in your home, bleaching your milk cartons. Maybe you were homeschooling some little ones while you were trying to do your job, while you were trying to figure out all this new video conferencing technology, while you were just feeling afraid and anxious and sad and lonely. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with. But then George Floyd, and then wildfires, and then a presidential election, which I don't even have words for. We're not even in, we're not in 2020 anymore, of course. But the stuff does just keep coming. We haven't really been able to catch our breath. I mean, we have deepening political unrest. We have ongoing economic uncertainty. We have ever intensifying racism and exclusion on almost every level of human society. We have class division. We have an exploding mental health crisis. We have horrifying school shootings. We have a climate crisis. I could actually probably go on for the entire hour listing things that are painful and hard right now. Here's what's true. As individuals and as a society, we are still trying to emerge from one of the most traumatizing moments in recent history. And everywhere we are seeing the effects of people's mental exhaustion, that just their emotional, everybody feels so drained. And even if we're not depressed, like clinically depressed, many of us are. So Adam Grant wrote an article a number of years ago, and he used this word languishing. And it just means this state of just being like meh. You can't rise above meh in anything, whether it's work or home or friends or hobbies. You just don't have the energy for anything. I can't even, I'm so exhausted. I'm sure some of you have heard of quiet quitting. It's this thing where people show up to work and they do the bare minimum. They just don't have the kind of interest and engagement that they used to. In fact, if you know someone who's quietly quitting something in their life, who's like showing up but kind of just doing the bare minimum because they're in survival mode, I want you to write me in the chat, right? It could be you, it could be somebody else, but if you know someone who's sort of barely showing up for something, write me in the chat. Okay. The chat is exploding before our eyes. Yeah. Wow. Everybody, look at that. So there's a lot of this happening, this languishing feeling. Well, what's going on here? Like, what is this all about? I'm a therapist and I think about nervous systems a lot, our brains and our bodies and how they're functioning. And there's this term called VUCA, which I recently learned, and it just means volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It was coined a couple decades ago, but that is our world right now. And our nervous systems are so tired. And so when it comes to trauma theory, this is like trauma theory 101, when we feel wounded and threatened and like everything's coming at us at once and it hurts, we pull back, we conserve energy, we focus on just getting by. And you can call it survival mode, you can call it quiet quitting, you can call it languishing, you can call it, I can't even, if you want to use fancy psychological terms, you can call it autonomic hypoarousal. But whatever it is, it's evidence of human pain. And it's affecting our neighborhoods, our homes, our places of worship, and of course, our workplaces. But what if there was something you could start doing today to feel better and to help others around you feel better too? A little bit more felt and seen and accepted and advocated for in the midst of all of this. More like, hey, I see what you're dealing with. I feel you. It makes sense. We're only human, and wow, you are shouldering a lot. We all are shouldering a lot. You know what? I'm going to get in there and I'm going to help and support you the best way I know how, because I am personally invested in the promise of your greater resilience and happiness and well-being and flourishing. What if someone offered you that? What if, if you're feeling that way, what if someone came and offered you that? Or maybe there's someone who's feeling this way. What would it feel like to offer them that kind of a presence? Well, I have just described in a nutshell what compassionate leadership means and what it does. It's seeing someone who's struggling or stressed out. It's feeling with them in a humanizing way or empathizing with them. And then it's doing something to help out. And why do you help? Well, because here is somebody whose well-being and potential you are passionately committed to nurturing and developing for whatever reason, whether they're your child or someone on your work team or someone in your neighborhood or someone in your community group. You care about this person. Now, compassion isn't a personality trait that's inbuilt that you either have or don't have. It is actually a skill that you can get and you can grow. And that's the hopeful news here. You can learn to be a more compassionate leader to yourself, your kids, your work team, your community, and beyond. And you should, because compassionate leadership makes a measurable difference. Just looking at the workplace alone, employees who experience their manager as compassionate have a 36% higher commitment to the organization. They're much less likely to quit when their manager is compassionate. 76% of workers who feel that their manager is compassionate are highly engaged at work. Over 3/4. 87% of employees say when there's mutual empathy between employees and leaders, it increases their creativity and their innovation and their flow at work. We're talking about caring human connections, and that is just the fuel of so many good things in life. Compassion helps people and organizations thrive. And when leaders are compassionate, you feel it. You feel it. People laugh, they have fun together. They ask about each other's kids. When you're in a meeting, it has this feeling of ease and flow and lightness. And if somebody has a new idea, they're not afraid to throw it out there, even if it's half-baked, because they know they're not going to get shot down. People take risks because it's safe. It's safe. And that's what I'm talking about here. Caring connections build a foundation of greatness. Whether it's your family, whether it's your school, whether it's your nonprofit, whether it's your corporation. But how? How do you start to build that kind of an environment? Well, you're in luck. That's exactly what we're going to do here today, this afternoon. In the next maybe half hour or so, I'm going to tell you about the 4 essential elements of compassionate leadership. And you're going to walk away with actual strategies that you can implement starting today that are going to help you lead with more connection and more care and more courage in a world that is hurting so much, right? Now, you might be curious about who the heck I am. So I'm just going to say a few words about that. As Sarita did a fantastic intro. Thank you, Sarita. I'm Dr. Andrea Hollingsworth. I'm a therapist. I have a small practice. I meet with people in these comfy leather chairs right behind me. I'm a former university professor, and I love helping build cultures of care and compassion. Why? 2 things. Compassionate leaders have made a huge difference in my own life, and I have a lot of stories I could tell you about that. So it's personal. But the second thing is that as a therapist, I have seen the difference that compassion can make, and self-compassion, which we're going to talk about. And so with everybody that's running on fumes and traumatized out there right now, I feel almost a calling to get the stuff out there. A lot of what you're going to hear today emerges from my compassionate leadership. Whoops, I got to go back a slide. Here we go. There we go. My compassionate leadership program. And this gives especially managers in organizations practical tools for leading with care and effectiveness in our wounded world today. I'm also an experienced public speaker. I love speaking. I love educating and inspiring people to lead with both a really big heart and a really strong spine. And so if what you hear today resonates with you and you want to connect more with me and you can think of a group that might benefit from hearing this, just email me. Let's set up a time to talk and explore. After the webinar, there'll be a QR code and all kinds of things where you can get in touch with me to connect. All right, so let's start with essential number 1, self-compassion. When it comes to being compassionate for others or with others, that really does begin with ourselves. But self-kindness is an uphill battle for so many of us, and I'm including myself here. Research shows that leaders especially rely a lot on self-criticism to keep themselves motivated and focused and engaged. Now, what about you? This is for you. I want you to look at this list for just a moment, and I want you to ask yourself, which of these apply to me often or always? I'll go ahead and read them and just maybe keep track. Number 1, when it comes to self-evaluation, I tend to be quite hard on myself. Number 2, it's difficult for me to adjust when things don't go as planned. 3, positive feedback and approval from others is very important to me. 4, I tend to procrastinate and it often creates anxiety and problems. 5, I'm critical of others, sometimes to the point of being mean to them. 6, it's hard for me to know when something I do is good enough, so I just keep going. 7, I tend to avoid asking for help or support because I don't want to look stupid. And 8, I often feel anxious and or depressed. All right, self-disclosure, for me, for most of my adult life, almost all of those applied to me almost all of the time. I have lots of stories, but I'll just say that, reaching for excellence, striving to be good at what you do is a good thing. I'm not saying we should all be slackers. Being able to self-correct, right? Those are good things. But healthy striving can sometimes turn into something that researchers call maladaptive perfectionism. Maladaptive perfectionism. Oops, I'll go back here. My slide is missing, that's okay. But anyway, this list of statements is a list of its key symptoms. And basically maladaptive perfectionism it involves dealing with really high levels of inner self-criticism, along with other stuff like anxiety and irritability, self-protectiveness, isolation, burnout, trouble kind of flexing and adapting when things change. And it's a really painful way to live. I know because I lived that way for a really long time. It can impact your relationships with other people, especially if you're a leader. So what I would say is that if 5 or more of those statements apply to you often or always, it might be something that you're dealing with, that you're suffering with. I don't diagnose people over webinars, certainly. But if these are resonating with you, you might really benefit from delving into this whole notion of self-compassion. And we're going to do that here. Still, I have to say self-compassion can feel a little bit counterintuitive. You know, at the height of my success when I was in academia and I was so hard on myself, I thought, boy, if I embrace self-compassion, man, my inner slacker is going to take over and absolutely ruin my life. I really thought that. But I was wrong, actually. Thousands of studies link self-compassion to high personal standards, high motivation to succeed, greater levels of self-initiative, greater self-confidence, and especially in terms of resilience. Self-compassion is really, really effective. Studies show that being reliably kind to yourself, especially when you make a mistake, it makes you more adaptable and more flexible, and you can recalibrate in the wake of problems or challenges or setbacks. And we all need that because there's a new challenge or setback every day in this world. Our brains have this baked in negativity bias, though. We're primed to see all the bad stuff, especially about ourselves, before we see the good. And there are all kinds of reasons for that: internalized oppression, our evolutionary heritage, all kinds of things. And so it takes work and intentionality to be self-compassionate. So let's talk about how we do this now. Self-compassion means learning to make 3 inward moves when you are stressed out, when you're struggling with when you're in pain, or when you made a mistake. And here's what they are. I get this, by the way, from the awesome research of Kristen Neff. Mindfulness. First of all, you simply become aware of what you're experiencing. You just notice, hey, this is a tough moment for me right now. You can even say to yourself, whatever language you use, like, yeah, this is really shitty right now. Or, yeah, this hurts, or this sucks, or whatever. You just notice, because then it gets you out of it and you're looking at it. You're going, this isn't nice. Common humanity is the second thing. So you intentionally recall that struggles are a part of the human experience. There isn't anything that is wrong with you. It simply means that you're human. And it also means that you're not alone. And there are untold numbers of people struggling probably in the same way you are right now across the global community. And the third thing is kindness. So you choose to be kind to yourself in this moment. You do something, you take action. You respond to yourself with care. You say to yourself, I choose to be kind to myself in this moment, even though I made whatever mistake, or even though, this is so hard. And then you go do something. If you're sitting at your desk, it's as simple as, okay, I didn't plan this, but I put this water flavoring in my water. I feel like I'm fessing up. Like, it can be as small as that. I'm gonna give myself an extra shot of Mio today. It doesn't matter. Something small that says, I am not gonna let myself get dragged down into self-criticism here. I'm gonna choose kindness. That's it. Practicing that makes you more resilient. Really does. It makes you a stronger, better leader. All right. We're gonna move on to number 2, which is awareness. One of my favorite philosophers is Simone Weil. I talk about her a lot. And she wasn't a perfect person herself. She had a lot of issues, but she had a lot of good thoughts too. And she said that the greatest gift that we can give another person is attention, especially when they're stressed or struggling or suffering. And isn't that true? Because all of us, when we're in a tough moment, we have this deep need for somebody to just pay attention to us and say, I see you. I see what you're going through. I witness your pain. I see it. One of the worst things when you're suffering is to be ignored, or to have nobody take notice of it, right? But cultivating awareness requires a lot of intentionality, because everything works against our attention these days. Our attention is always being hijacked by every damn thing in the world. I mean, here's my phone, and the notifications on these things, I have several metaphors I use, and one of them is, it makes me feel like a caffeinated squirrel in a nut factory. I cannot stop. I am everywhere all at once. And just putting it down, putting it in the drawer so I can clear my mind and be more aware of myself and others. It's just, a necessity, right? Another thing that works against us is just we're all so busy. There's so much going on. And we feel like taking time to notice somebody else is going to decrease our productivity, right? And we end up unintentionally communicating this message like, you know what? You just do you. I don't even care. I don't have time. I'm too stressed out, right? And we don't mean that in our heart, but our nonverbals communicate that. And sadly, sometimes it even gets it gets communicated even to our family members, the people that we love the most. Simone Weil was a powerful proponent of this question, what are you going through? What are you going through? And I truly believe that now is always the time to ask some kind of version of that question. You don't have to say it that way, but checking in on people, taking time to intentionally notice, what are you going through? Maybe it's coming too late, ask anyway. Maybe you feel awkward, ask anyway. Maybe you don't know if the person even wants to engage with you. That's okay. If you ask, they'll know that you cared. Always good to ask anyway. What are you going through? So here are some tips, some very practical tips for becoming more aware. First of all, give yourself permission to care. There is this unspoken belief in so much public life, especially, work life, that, well, we're professional here and people are here to get things done, right? People are getter-doners before they're human beings in this place. No one says it that way, but that's how it feels. And I think it's really essential that we switch this up in our head, especially right now. We need each other more than ever right now. And so kindness is actually adaptive. We were built to be kind. That's how our species got to, do all the things we do. Kindness is built in and it's good for everything. And so if you feel like reaching out to somebody, you absolutely should. You shouldn't think twice, especially in the name of professionalism. Prioritize people over tasks. Haugard and Carter have this saying, busyness kills the heart. And every time I hear that, I'm like, oh God, I hope my heart isn't dying. Because I like you, we're all so busy. And it takes sacrifice, to take time out of your day with everything on your plate, to connect with someone, to look them in the eye, to lean in a little bit and ask them how they really are. But it is so worth it. And it's actually, I think, essential. Brave spaces. I bet some of you have heard of brave spaces. So these are regularly scheduled meetings where leaders simply listen to those they lead. They get together and the goal is not to get defensive. It isn't to fix problems. It's simply about leaders just witnessing what people are experiencing, hearing them share their stories or the things they're struggling with or their hopes or what they're wondering about. Again, it's about listening and not solving problems, just connecting as a leader. These can really be highly transformative, especially when it comes to culture change. If there are diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, justice challenges within a community, those spaces of safe listening are so key. And I know I'm talking to an audience that I think understands that pretty deeply. Ask purposeful questions. Okay, so I want to start at the level of the individual here. Asking how are you is fine if you just want to say hi to somebody, right? But if you really want to connect with someone and check in with them, you have to get specific. So let's say you're at work and you want to check in with someone on your team that you lead or a colleague. And maybe last week their project went haywire in a way that was super painful and cost them a lot of mental energy and time. Start out by saying, hey, that project last week that fell apart, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. Have you had a chance to catch your breath yet? That was just bonkers, right? Instead of how are you? Or if it's your child. So I have a 6-year-old, a newly minted 6-year-old. And when he comes home from school, I try to ask him a question like, not how are you or how was your day, but something like, tell me about a time when you showed kindness today to somebody. Was it maybe on the playground or maybe during the story hour? Or what was the yummiest thing somebody brought to lunch today? He likes that question a lot because then he talks about gummy bears and stuff like that. So getting really specific with people is the key to asking purposeful questions. But I also want to talk about the group level. Asking good questions is really important especially with organizations. You need to be able to listen to everyone when it comes to understanding what people are experiencing about workplace culture, or inclusion and belonging and justice at work, or mental health in the workplace, or their onboarding experience, or if they're leaving, their exiting experience. Like, you need to be able to do deep listening. And here I decided this morning I have to give a random 5-star review here of a company that I just became a paying customer at Question Pro. And I don't do this very often, but I have had such an amazing experience with this company. My Compassion 360 assessment is housed with them. And they make these beautiful surveys and tools for employee listening that are so easy to use and so incredible. But it's the people at the company that have made me absolutely fall in love with Question Pro. They walk the walk of compassionate connection and employee listening. The guy who helps me build and distribute my surveys asks about my kid, comments on my LinkedIn posts, like he's my friend. And it's just been such a good company to work with. So just like friend to friend here, if you are looking for a company to help you do employee listening, email me and I will actually put you directly in touch with the person who can set you up the free version there. And then you'll probably fall in love with it too. But I had to throw that in because I've just had such a good experience. All right. So let's talk about empathy. The human brain is built to empathize. We have these things called mirror neurons in our brain. Maybe some of you have heard about them. At a neurological level, other beings' experiences can become our own. And I have a horse on my slide because I'm trained as an equine assisted psychotherapist, and even horses have mirror neurons, and they can tune in at a very deep embodied biological level to what others are going through, others of their own species and human beings. And it's very, very powerful. And when people feel empathy like that coming from their leaders, it makes a huge difference. They can feel it. You know when your leaders get it, when they understand you at that level. I have a story here. I have a friend who a couple of years ago in 2020 held a high-ranking leadership position in a key division of the city of Minneapolis, my home city. And in the days following the George Floyd murder, the division responded publicly to that event in some ways that ended up deeply hurting and offending some members of his team. All right. And not long after that, he found himself on a Zoom call or Teams or whatever platform with his team. And on the call were the people who had made the offensive comments, and also the people who were offended. And it was, maybe some of you have been on calls like this. It's really awkward when there's that kind of tension and it's hard. And so here's what he did. He started the meeting by saying this: everyone, my voice is shaking and I'm needing to take a few deep breaths here because I am feeling a lot. Mostly I'm feeling pain. I am pained over the hurt in our city, and I am pained and sad over the hurt here on this team. And before we start our meeting, I just have to say that whatever you're feeling here today is welcome. Whatever you're feeling is welcome. And if we didn't feel things here in this division, we wouldn't be human. And more than anything, we have to hold on to our humanity. And then he led everybody in a moment of silence so that they could connect with what they were feeling, whether it was anger or sadness or embarrassment or whatever. And then he took a deep breath and he led a really productive meeting. And it was just a fantastic moment of leadership. It communicated to everybody, I empathize with you, and it's okay to be a whole human being here with all of the emotions you may be experiencing. It's courageously vulnerable empathy, and it's also highly effective leadership at the same time. So what can you start doing today? What are the empathy strategies? First of all, be fully present. This is hard, again, because of these distraction devices that are all over our lives, but try not to multitask. Do your very best, even inside. If you're listening to somebody and you find yourself finishing an email or writing your grocery list or whatever it is, you're actually not mentally with that person at that point. So just keep guiding yourself back over and over again if needed to that person and that conversation. Be vulnerable. So when you can share appropriately, and you do have to think about discretion and boundaries and all those good things, right? You don't want to lay everything bare in an inappropriate way to those you're leading, because that's more about you than them, and then that can become quite harmful, actually. But sharing appropriately what you're going through really increases the sense of connection and loyalty with the people that you lead, showing your own humanity. Contrary to what you might think, when you're vulnerable, like my friend that I just described, it increases respect for you as a leader. Some people think it's going to make people disrespect me. It does the opposite. Lean in. Okay, I'm actually not being metaphorical here. Actually lean in. I'm leaning in right now, and you can do this hybrid too. Look at if you're on a Zoom call or something, look at the little green dot where people can see your eyes. Smile, relax your shoulders, take some deep breaths while you're connecting, maybe in a one-on-one with a team member. People feel that. We have this connection at a biological level to the energy of other people. And we have to think about it a little bit more when we're connecting over a computer, but we can still do some things that make people feel that empathic connection. We really can. If you don't know, say so. When a leader can say, I don't know what the answer is here, this is really complex, but here's how we're going to find out. And you're going to be a part of it, and you're going to be a part of it, and you're going to be a part of it. I got this from Pamela Maynard. She's the awesome CEO of Avanade. She described how she did this when COVID hit with her whole company. It's so inspiring. So people know if you don't know what to do, they already know it anyway. So there's no sense in trying to fake it. But say, here's how we're going to find out, and then include people. Be boundaried. Okay, I have two things to say about boundaries. And the first one is that realize that you're not responsible for people's full healing and betterment and everything. I mean, you can be a supporter, not a savior. And I have to tell myself that all the time as a therapist. There's a difference between getting in there and helping and supporting, which is great. And and on the other hand, kind of being weighted down and sort of taken under the waters of somebody's pain. Because there are so many situations where you can't save somebody from what they're going through, but you can be that empathic presence. And so those internal boundaries, right, where you're connecting with them, but there's also a level of disconnection, that's important too, and that's okay. More than okay, it's needed. And the second thing is to be clear about what's okay and not okay for you in terms of your own emotional well-being. I love Brené Brown, and her research has demonstrated that the most effectively compassionate people in this world are also the most boundary people. They're able to say no, they're able to connect, but know when, excuse me, but they know when they've reached their limit, right? And so connect with yourself to find those places where I've reached my limit and maybe I need to get somebody else's help here because I just can't help anymore. That's important. All right, essential number 4 is action. Philo of Alexandria was famous for this saying, and you've probably heard it, be kind, for everyone is fighting a hard battle. Be kind, for everybody is fighting a hard battle. I bet every person on this call is fighting some kind of hard battle. I'd be willing to put money on it. So we don't know what people are going through, but everybody's going through something. And so the question is, how can leaders help relieve people's pain and stress and struggle, even if it's just a little bit, whatever it is that they're going through? And this is a crucial question to ask, because if you stop with empathy and you don't follow up with action, you end up with incompetence and indifference rather than compassion. That's when you end up getting sort of sunk down in somebody else's pain, and then everybody's underwater, and that's not what you want. Remember, compassion is empathy plus action. It's doing something and getting in there. All right, so here are my strategies for action. You're probably saying, okay, I want to get in there. What is it that I can do? The first thing I have to say is that just do something. And here's what I mean. I've been following the research of Dr. Jane Dutton for a long time, and she studies compassionate leadership. And she has this quote. She says, compassion is action in the face of not knowing. Because, someone else's stress and struggle, we often do feel kind of helpless. Like, I just don't know. But Dutton and her research team have actually found that some of the most effective compassionate action comes from people who don't actually know what to do, but they decide to just get in there anyway and try something. One of the quotes from one of our study participants, I love this. The participant said, if you don't know what to say anything. And I just think that's so good. Name the obvious. Simply acknowledging stress and pain is a really good place to start. So, recent societal events just continue to create hardship that people feel at every level. And acknowledging to some degree, like, especially by being vulnerable and showing how it's affecting you, something like, everybody, wow, that school shooting yesterday. If you can't get it out of your mind, I can't get it out of my mind either. And let's all just take a moment and acknowledge what we're feeling with that and resolve to be extra kind to one another today and to ourselves. That's all, just naming the obvious. Start a compassion e-newsletter. If you're a leader in an organization, this is a really powerful thing to do. There's often this grassroots feel to compassionate action where, somebody notices that somebody's struggling and then decides to start some kind of a campaign, like a meal train or a, sign up list for driving somebody's aging parent to some medical appointments, whatever it is. If you see that happening in your organization, with employees, call that out, and an e-newsletter is a really great way to do that. Maybe quarterly, if you catch wind of acts of kindness and compassion in your team, in your organization, do a little write-up on that person and send it out to everybody, of course, with their permission. And that creates the sense of like, oh, that matters here. Those things get noticed here. Maybe I'll make a little bit of an extra effort to be kind here too. And it can start to shift the culture in some really cool ways. Create a to-be list. I love this one. So if you lead a group of people, you probably have a lot of things to do. Everybody's got a to-do list a mile long. But, well, first of all, I have to say, getting your shit done is important. Please don't hear me saying that everybody needs to just, talk to each other and connect and not get their work done. That's not what I'm saying at all. But here's something you could try during your next team meeting to create a little bit more connection. So start out not by talking about your to-do list, but everybody creates a to-be list. Here are the ways that I want to be this quarter or this year. Character traits, like I want to be more bold. I want to be more attentive. I want to be more boundaried. I want to be more helpful. I want to be more creative. I want to be more self-aware. I want to be more lighthearted and full of laughter, like whatever it is. Everybody creates their top 5 and then shares them. And then you get together and you create a top 5 for your team. This is how our team is going to be this quarter, this year. These are the character traits we want to work on cultivating in ourselves and with our clients or our customers or whoever they are. And it just creates that level of compassionate human connection at the level of like personal awareness and awareness of others that can be really, really awesome. Communicate hard things in a human way. So as a leader, there's no getting around the fact that you have to do and say hard things. Maybe you have to have a corrective conversation with somebody who's underperforming, or maybe you have to announce, a layoff, or maybe, everybody, we're gonna have to redo this project. There's a major glitch or something, whatever it is. You have to do these things. There's no getting around it, but you can do them in a callous way, or you can do them in a compassionate way. And I want to share this really cool study I came across not too long ago. So a number of researchers from Yale, Columbia, and Stanford got together and they they had middle schoolers write essays. And then they had teachers deliver different kinds of feedback to these essay writers. And they discovered that one form of feedback was so incredibly powerful in terms of its ability to motivate the students to come back to that essay and boost, effort and performance with their writing, that they called it magical feedback. And here's what it was. It was 19 words. This is what it was. I'm giving you these comments because I have very high expectations and I know that you can reach them. I'm giving you these comments because I have very high expectations and I know that you can reach them. That's it. And those words convey, hey, I see you, I know you, you belong, you're special, and I believe in you. At the same time, it's corrective conversation and it is compassionate action. Laugh together. This is underestimated, isn't it? I mean, in a world where everyone is out of bandwidth, running on fumes, we all need to go out of our way to laugh together. And so, I mean, it's not just an optional nice to have. I feel like it's a necessity. And it's also one of the most visceral indicators of human psychological safety and belonging is laughter. And so just go out of your way to get people's belly jelly jiggling together. It's so healing and it's so important. And then finally, strive to believe the best. Our beliefs about people help to create those people. Our beliefs about people help create and recreate people. Rosenthal's famous study, 1968, the Pygmalion effect. Teachers were told at the beginning of the school year that 3 specific students in their class were gifted. They had aced some kind of aptitude IQ test or something, but the teachers were told, don't treat those students any differently than the rest. Just know these 3 students are very gifted. I bet you can guess what happened. So at the end of the school year, those 3 students had significantly higher academic performance scores than the other students in the class. Right? Doesn't that say something? Our beliefs about people can really influence who they become and who they are. And believing the best in people, seeing their potential, even if it's hard, even if there's a lot of pain, even if they piss you off, is really, that's the heartbeat of compassionate action. It may not change anything that you actually do with those people, but it'll change the presence that you have with them and the way they feel when they're around you. As I wrap up here, I have a question for you. If you have heard it said, live each day as if it's your last, I want you to write yes in the chat. Live each day as if it's your last. Again, lots of people have heard that. There goes the chat. Yeah, that's a common one. I love that one. It's still going up. Fantastic. It puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? Wow, what if I die tomorrow? I recently, though, I heard a talk by a speaker by the name of Og Magdino. And he suggests we try out another saying, and it's this: treat each person as if it's their last day on earth. Treat each person as if it's their last day on earth. Just imagine for a second that the most difficult person in your life is going to die tomorrow. Picture their face and imagine that today is their last day. I would be willing to bet that today you show them a bit more appreciation, a bit more goodwill, a bit more genuine gratitude and love than you ever have before. Now expand that out. What if that saying became your MO, not just for today, but for tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that, because no one's existence is guaranteed. Our life is so precious and so fleeting, all of our lives. Last month, I was speaking with an HR executive at a Minnesota energy company who lost an employee last year to suicide, and nobody saw it coming. Not the employee's closest colleagues, not the employee's manager, nobody. And the truth is, we don't know what people are going through, and we don't know what kind of run they have left ahead of them. And so what I suggest is that we slap a big old human being first lens over every other thing, every other role that these people occupy. You know, maybe they're at work, maybe they're another person who's just like not their work isn't up to par. They're not being as productive as they used to. Human being first. Maybe they're another mid-year review you have to prepare for and you don't have time. Human being first. Maybe they're like asking for PTO and you're like, I don't even know how I'm going to put this month together because so many people, I can't believe this, you know, human being first. Heck, maybe they're your child. My 6-year-old, like every time he doesn't listen to me for the second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth time, I want to tear my hair out. Human being first, right? And maybe it doesn't alter anything you're immediately doing with this person, but it does change your presence with them. Compassionate people, says Albert Einstein, are geniuses in the art of living, more necessary to the dignity, security, and joy of humanity than the discoverers of knowledge. Whatever your role is today in leadership in this world, in every sphere, I hope you leave this webinar today a little bit more of a genius in this precious art of life and leadership and compassion than you were an hour ago. Because we all of us are human beings first. Human beings first. All right. So thank you so much again for joining me here today. I'd like you to take a second to listen to yourself and notice what called to you. What action strategy would you like to try today or next week or next month? Any movement toward compassionate connection is going to reap rewards for you in your life. Maybe jot down one thing or two, one or two, but at least one. All right. And if you would like to connect with me more, please do. Please reach out to me. My email, I even have my phone number on this.